York, frankly, through and after that period of time, which I think is remarkable in some ways, and probably worth exploring why. This is Roppongi Hills. It's a tower by Cone Pedersen Fox, in which a large Japanese conglomerate company has purchased over time the whole area, built many parts of many architects working. KPF did the tower, and I think there's another picture next. Yeah, and did interesting things, actually put public space on the top of the building, which is thought in commercial terms to be the premier rentable space, and then various public accessible spaces throughout the upper portions of the building. And it's a magnificent view of Tokyo from the top, and there's the Mori Museum in it as well, which has terrific artwork as well. But to put public at the top of the building with the commercial below is an interesting thing. But in Japan, there are a number of these projects, probably 5 or 6 that we can think of offhand, which has bought huge areas in Tokyo and tried to put an entire city, really internalize all the functions, all the amenities, all the hotel, all the office in single projects. The next one, probably the latest one, is this, which is Tokyo Midtown, named for your very own Midtown, I think, and designed by us at SOM in New York. And again, it's a super project with one tower and then a hotel tower, office tower, hotel tower, a series of podium offices, amenities at many levels, a museum by Tadao Ando, 2.5 acres of gardens, open spaces, and it's very elaborate, all within singly controlled ownership. Something we talk about in Los Angeles, but in LA it's usually entertainment companies. It's not large construction development companies as it is in Japan. Next. China. It's impossible really to talk about China because there's so much going on in China. The exhibition that you're going to see tomorrow will open that up for you, I'm sure. But obviously, in Pudong, in Shanghai, and MGM Tower, a Grand Hyatt in the upper portion of that. Those of you that have been in with an enormous atrium, you rise all the way up in express elevators. You get off, I've forgotten, 48th floor, something like that, and your lobby, your check-ins at 48. You see the entire city and the river, and then you go up to the Grand Hyatt, and there's this almost infinitely tall helical atrium up through the center of that, and you're already up in the sky. It's phenomenal. It's opening up new sort of tactic experiences, physical experiences for us when we get this tall. The building, in certain ways, being Chinese or having a level of sort of detail or resonance which appears to be ornamental and appears to relate to maybe Chinese culture, but again, a very modern piece, and China sort of struggling to resolve those two formal issues. Next. And then, and I could be showing you many, many projects now, but I've just reduced it down to the Faro Tower in La Défense by Morphosis and Central China TV, which you all read with the Mandarin, had a bit of a fire not that long ago, and will have to be rebuilt, but kind of extraordinary typologies that are both sort of bending the technology for buildings, but also the way that they're occupied, the way they're vertically circulated, the way they're programmed, and sort of challenging all those things, which is very interesting. And this is all happening abroad. Next. And a building I show, it's actually an office building by Jean Nouvel in Doha, Qatar, and sort of raises the whole issue that Hans Ebeling has talked about in his books on the super modern, as to when do buildings become so modern, so global, so hermetic, you might see them anywhere in the world, and they're very little about the place they're in, and they're everything about being anywhere. And is that really, when you talk about tall building in the context of the city, is that really what you want? Do you really want to come to New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco or anywhere else to be in a building or be a cityscape that is like anywhere else you could go? I think there are huge sort of philosophical issues with that sort of thing, and there are countless buildings that raise those questions, as I think is this one. Next. I mentioned the Burj Dubai, which you're all familiar with in Dubai, and topping off, and no one will say how tall it is, but I think people have an idea now. And my mind boggles at the thought that it's twice, if you've been on the top of the Sears Tower, you think it'd be twice that tall. And the thought, at least stated by the developers, you'll see the curvature of the earth. I don't know whether that's true or not. I guess we'll have to go and see. But it's sort of just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. Next. Last chapter in the book, and kind of one of my favorite to think about and to write, is about art skyscrapers. And it's not, it's about the conversation that has gone on in recent times about the idea of a tall building by architectural theorists and by artists and back and forth. It's not to say that one started, one wins, one loses, or one started, the other finished. It's just to say there's this ongoing thing over the past decades. And if you go to the next slides, this is a Larry Bell piece. You know, this perfect, iconic rectangle. You know, how many buildings have we seen that in some way resonate what this artist was thinking when he did it? The translucency of the glass skin. And I don't want to say it all together in jest, but how much difference is there between these two schemes at some level, you know? Of course, this is Roppongi's plan, and those of you who know Ludwig Hilbersheimer had plans that were similar, and they were rationalized grids, and then there were infills, and there was a whole idea about verticality, horizontality, and this is Solowitz, one of the series of lines, and there's obviously a conversation of awareness going on. This is a bit later than that, of course, but between the contributions of each of these. Next. And then, of course, in a more recent time, Peter Zumthor's building in Bregenz, and of course, the Bibliothèque Nationale by Dominique Perrault. You know, these are buildings which actually work and work hard to kind of stress detail, you know, to get a kind of exquisiteness of detail, but to not speak differentiation, sameness, sort of not express what's happening on the inside, and then these iconic rationalist things. Maybe these are the later cousins of those early buildings idealized in the 20s by Europeans. Next. Another way to think about artists and you know, highly creative ventures as it goes to tall buildings is the building as a staircase, or the building as landscape, or the tall building as mythology. This is Emilio Baz, and this is a theoretical shopping center he did in the late 80s. And then this is a very real city hall I did in Fukuoka City. Which obviously learned something from a theoretical building and carried it on. And it's a tall building, but it's a tall building as a ziggurat. It's a tall building where the carpet, the green landscape kind of comes up and subsumes the building. It sort of raises altogether new ideas about tall building possibilities. Next. Low-tech here in New York. The idea of the mobile dwelling unit, MDU, I believe they call it. You know, the unit which does everything you need for pleasure and satisfaction. And they get systematized into the building proposal for Lafayette Street here in Lower Manhattan. That you could have that, you could plug in, and you could aggregate tall buildings systematically through the application of these dwelling units. Next. Andrea Zittel, a German, New York, California artist. I like this building because I consider it a small skyscraper, sort of skyscraper in miniature. It's sort of biomorphic. It's actually in a suitcase. You can see the suitcase in the poster on the upper right. The suitcase opens up in the picture, you know, opens up, and it has all these vertical mixed-use things in it. And it's called the body disposal unit. She's very systematic and sometimes funny, I think. And you know, food storage and utensils are at the top, and then the cooking is here, and the dining is there, that comes out, and then the washing the plates is there, and then the drainage water is here, and there's a toilet that washes that. That way it all gets done in one thing. And she was fighting the segregation in the average house of all these things are normally in different rooms, done separately. She said, could you put them all together and vertically have them happen together? So I think I consider this in a way a small mixed-use skyscraper. She has that kind of brain. Vidar Conchi, a sculpture in 1980-81 in Brooklyn called Tall Building. And this was an expandable cellophane tall building that went to a skylight and sort of had a picture of a certain male organ there and sort of raised the issues of tall buildings and what are they really about. And they're delicate and they're vulnerable and they're expressive and can collapse in an instant, and they're built out of cellophane. And sort of, I think all of that sort of brings another idea about tall buildings and how monumental they really are. Next. And then the issue in our own time, I think this is very relevant, is the idea of text and content. And